Welcome, foolish mortals, to a very special, spooky kind of Kirblog. It's a chilling Tuesday, October 30th, the day before Halloween, and so, in preparation for the spookiest day of the year, I decided to do something a little different. To share with you all some campfire stories of supernatural activity. But unfortunately for yours truly, I myself have never had any experiences such as these, probably because I scare off the ghosts myself with my disgusting visage. But thanks to some very lovely friends of mine, I've collected an assortment of 4 ghost stories, and quite fittingly, as this is the end of Voice October, they expel from the mouths of 4 talented voice performers. Caitlyn Elizabeth, voice of LaCroix from Little Witch Academia; Austin Lee Matthews, voice of Iron Pound from Excel World; Erika Harlacher, voice of Ann from Persona 5; and Anna Kingsley, voice of Flame Girl from Tome. Join me for a little something called Kirb and Friends Tales of the Unexplainable. Enjoy.
Hey there, I'm Caitlyn Elizabeth. So when I was about 10 years old, my friend lived way out in the country, and she lived so far out there that the asphalt stopped and it was like a gravel road, and there were just a couple houses on one side and then a cow field on the other. So there was really not a lot of traffic out here. It was very peaceful, quiet in the summer. And on a bright sunny day, my friend and I went out to ride our bikes. So we rode up to the asphalt area of the road, because it's easier to ride on, and came up on this succession of these 3 hills. So when it's hot out, you know how asphalt kind of gets those wavy lines of heat. And I was sitting on the first hill, and all of a sudden all the sound drowned out. And I was staring at the second hill, like the center point of the second hill, seeing those wavy lines. And I thought that my eyes were playing a trick on me, because I saw a little glimpse of something black. And as I kept staring, it slowly raised up and was in the shape of a head. And as it kept going, I saw shoulders and a torso, and it was in the shape of a person, but it was completely filled in with black and almost kind of shadowy looking, if that makes sense. But there was nothing to tell of what it was. Like, I could see shadows where eyes would be and a nose would be. But in broad daylight, I could not see any defining features. No hair, no clothes, no anything. It was just a black form. And it was staring right at me. And all of a sudden, it snapped its head to the right and snapped its head to the left, snapped its head back at me. And then slowly it went back down, and it didn't even have that bob in its walk. It just kind of glided back down. And I was sitting there kind of transfixed at what I was looking at. And slowly I heard, "Caitlyn, Caitlyn, Caitlyn!" And I looked over, and my friend Kayla was yelling at me. And I looked, and a car had stopped right by my legs. I never heard the approach. I never heard any of it. So I shook my head a little bit and moved out of the way and let the car pass. And I rode my bike up to the second hill, and nothing was there. And I haven't seen it since.
My name is Austin Lee Matthews, and this is my ghost story. So in fall of 2008, I was in high school, and I was part of a trip that was going up to Oregon for marching band. And on the way up there and on the way back as well, we stopped at a spookaliciously named hotel called the Sandman Motel. So I was in a motel room with 3 other guys. 2 of them honestly fell asleep so early that they're not even at all important to the story. So me and 1 other guy were awake for both of the nights that we were on our way up there and on our way back at the Sandman Motel. And we were just staying up pretty late because both of us had difficulty sleeping. We were nervous because we had a big competition, and we just had difficulty sleeping anyway. And some weird things started to happen So there were two beds that were next to each other and a little bit of a gap in between. And my bed was in front of this mirror, and it was a very nice mirror. But I started to see some movement in the mirror. Like it's really hard to describe. Like at first, it just kind of seemed like they were just like, like just shadows on the wall kind of a thing. But as time went on, it seemed like there were people walking around in the mirror who weren't in the room with us. So I'm thinking I'm just sleep deprived. I'm hallucinating. I'm probably sleeping right now. And so I just kind of blow it off. But my friend Andrew, who's the one who was awake with me at the time, he says, Austin, is something weird going on right now? I say, what do you mean? And he says, well, that mirror is kind of freaking me out. I'm like, it's kind of freaking me out too. But what do you mean? And he says, well, I'm seeing, it looks like there's people walking around. And immediately I'm just like, oh boy. So I say, what are they doing? He says, I don't know. They just kind of look like they're walking around, almost like they're having like a party or something like that. And I say, yeah, I can kind of see what it looks like. Maybe they're like holding like glasses or something like that. And as soon as we start to kind of put the pieces together as to what we're kind of seeing, the shapes just stop in their fucking tracks. Just like as if they heard us suddenly talking about them and weren't exactly happy that we were talking about them. And that was like the super big scare of the night that kind of like led into some other weird things that were happening. Like we saw like a face in the mirror. This is going to be weird, but it felt like the room was like alive. Like the room itself felt alive, which is weird as hell to say, but like, I don't know. The next morning, we go up to Oregon, and then we perform, and then a couple days later, we come back, and the band teacher, gets that hotel room, and I say, oh my God, you got the haunted room, and he says, I shit you not, he just says, fuck that, and he gives me the hotel key, and goes to get 3 more for the other guys who are in the hotel room with us. So we settle in for the night. The other 2 guys, of course, fucking honk out like immediately. They were tired freshmen and we were seniors. Well, I was a senior and Andrew was a junior. But we were just talking, and I think we were talking about girls because at the time I thought I was straight, but when I was really actually pansexual. And Andrew is bisexual. Which is important in a second. But we were just kind of talking and we're just like, who do you have a crush on? Whatever, blah, 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 blah. And we had left a chair kind of just in the middle of the room and had it kind of tilted towards us. And we started to see what looked like a shadow kind of settling into the chair. And so we both see it and we both are just like, hey, do you fucking see that shit? And so we're trying to ignore it. So we keep talking. And as we're talking, the shape is starting to be more humanoid. And it looks like a man wearing like a bowler hat. And we acknowledge it. We're just like, hey, is that a fucking guy wearing a bowler hat? And so we're talking and we're really just trying to kind of ignore the thing, hoping it'll go away if we don't look at it. And so Andrew says, I also like guys. Are there any guys that you like? And as soon as he fucking says that, the shadow in the chair lunges at him. Fucking just like, whoom! And he just fucking screams just like, ah! And just like fucking dives into the bed with me and just starts going, fuck dude, hold me. And so we're both fucking freaking out. And that was it. Nothing else happened that night except he got attacked by a fucking shadow wearing a bowler hat. I still want to go back up there sometime and see what the hell was going on with that shit.
I'm Erika Harlacher, and this is my ghost story. Okay, so this happened when I was working in production at a certain anime company in the Los Angeles area. And this happened at a building that this company does not own anymore. But back when I worked there was one main building and then there was a second building that was basically like a warehouse, but they had like another booth in there. So in case they had too many projects that were going all at one time, then people would record at this secondary location, which again, they don't own anymore. Thank goodness. So I will not run into this ghost again, I hope. So I got sent there one day to get the studio over there ready. And since people weren't over there that much before they were going to have a recording session, they would like send one of us over to make sure, you know, that like the computers turned on and that there were like water and all the apples weren't all, you know, gross and bad and squishy with worms in them or whatever. There's apples in recording booths, by the way, in case you didn't know that. Anyway, so I was over there. I was doing all that. In order to get into this warehouse, there was like a code that I had to put in to turn off the alarm. And then I also had like a key because it was always locked. So I, you know, went in, did the code, blah, 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 and I locked the door behind me. I always came in through the back. So the kitchen was at the back of the building. That was where one entrance was. There was another entrance at the front of the building through the entryway. And yeah, you entered in the entryway. And I didn't use that one because I parked in the back. So I was, you know, doing my thing, getting everything ready. It was just me. I like checked to make sure there were like, because sometimes they would rent out the studio to like people mixing other things. So I like checked to make sure nobody else was there because it would be like awkward if I ran into somebody. And no, it was just me. And the alarm was like on when I came in. So that was another indicator that there was nobody there. So it was about, I don't know, maybe like 5 to 10 minutes into me being there. And I'm in the booth and I hear footsteps start to come down the hallway outside of the booth. And so the way that the building was set up is there was the kitchen at the back and then a hallway, one single hallway leading from the kitchen to where the booth was. And there was no other like way for anybody to go. The only other thing off of the kitchen was a bathroom, and there's no other exit from the bathroom. So it was just the door to the outside that was locked, the kitchen, little bathroom that's not consequential to this story, and a hallway, and then where I was. And I could hear that the footsteps were coming from that hallway, and so I was like, oh, somebody must be here. I'll like go see who it is. So I went around the corner, the footsteps stop, and there's nobody there. And I was like, okay, that was weird. They were like very clear, like, you know, like a hard shoe on tile footsteps. So I go into the kitchen. There's nobody in there. I check the bathroom. Nobody's in there. The door is still locked. And I'm like, okay, that was weird. I start to get a little anxious, but I'm like, you know, maybe I was just imagining things. I don't know. So I go back. As soon as I go back in the booth, I start hearing footsteps again. So I run out and I look down the hallway to try and like catch whoever this person is. And again, there's nobody there. Footsteps stop. So at this point, I'm starting to feel super like there's somebody like there, like watching me. So I'm like, oh my God, I have so much to still do. And I was trying to like do it really fast. I was like on the verge of tears, you know, trying not to freak out because I thought I was going to be murdered by a ghost. And about like 10 minutes later, I was finally finishing everything that I had to get done. And one of my other friends who worked in production with me comes in through the front door. And I love him. He's awesome. But he like gave me like a, you know, friendly hard time when I started. He would like play pranks on me sometimes. And so I was like, oh, thank God, it's you. You were just playing a prank on me, right? And he was like, what are you talking about? I just got here and I parked out front. And I was like, no. You were here like 10 minutes ago, right? Like walking down that hallway and then somehow hiding somewhere or something. And he was like, no. What are you talking about? And I was like on the verge of like crying. So he was like, no, like that's a really long prank. Like I wouldn't do that. That's weird. And I was like, oh my God, what are you talking about? I swear I was hearing footsteps. And he goes, oh yeah, well this place is haunted. Did no one tell you that? And I was like, no one told me that. And he was like, oh, go and ask like the casting director and like the audio engineer that comes here and they'll have like great stories for you. And I was like, oh my God, okay. So I did. I asked them and they all had like these crazy ghost stories about things that would happen at this warehouse. And especially the audio engineer had some crazy ones. Like he would be mixing in the mixing room and he would like hear someone come through the door and like footsteps and then someone sit in the chair next to him, but there's like nobody there. And then like stuff on like the audio board would start to like move, like somebody was messing with the controls and he'd be like, okay, I have to get work done. Don't do that. And he was like, don't worry, it's like a friendly ghost. And I was like, I don't care if it's a friendly ghost. I'm not going back there by myself. So I didn't. From then on, for the rest of the time I worked there, I always made someone else go And sometimes I would tell them it was haunted, and sometimes I wouldn't, because maybe then they wouldn't want to go either, and then I would have to go. So, I'd rather a ghost get them than me. And that's my ghost story.
Hello, my name is Anna Kingsley, and this is my ghost story. When I was in high school, there were many times when I had to watch my niece. She was very well behaved, except on rare occasions when she wasn't. Like most kids, I guess. And in our house especially, we had people coming and going. One night, while watching her, she randomly bolts to the kitchen in the middle of playing. I run after her, assuming she just wants some attention or someone to actively play with. So I briskly walk through the threshold of the kitchen, past the computer desk, and stop just before the fridge to pick her up. During this short distance, out of the corner of my eye, I see a shadow. I just assume it's someone doing their laundry at the other end of the room and continue towards my niece. As I go to pick her up, I hear what sounds like a bag rustling. Naturally, I turn around to see what it is. As I turn, I notice the shadow again, but getting a better look, I notice that it's not on a wall. I slowly start to remember that I'm the only one home currently, and this shadow is not only not on the wall, but it's bent over the computer desk that I had just passed. And it's huge. It's at least 7 foot, and looks like No-Face from Spirited Away, just without the mask. I look at the computer desk and see the shopping bag that I'd just heard. The shadow is bent over, looking inside this bag. But in the tiny span it takes me to understand what I was seeing and register everything, it slowly starts standing straight up and turns towards me and my niece. I promptly grab my niece and walk back to the living room, not even daring to look back at the kitchen. Later that night, when people are home and I felt less spooked, I go back into the kitchen to look into the bag. What the ghost wanted was 2 bags of chocolate.
Thank you once again to my lovely guests for sharing their unexplainable tales. Be sure to follow each of them on their respective Twitters, shown in the video and in the description below. And to everyone else listening, have a safe and spooky Halloween. I'll be seeing you all in your nightmares.